Hello everyone, I'm Iron Phoenix and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4. A little bit later tonight, the things transpired. But no, now we can get on and deal with Africa. From what I remember, Africa was a little bit more interesting. So, okay, so we are in 24th of April 1940. The German Reich are actually doing really badly. Italy as well, they're just really struggling to push up into France, and I think we'll keep up the uh, the pressure. That's the word. The pressure. We'll keep up the pressure. Keep pushing. Oh, not really keep pushing, but just keep holding. I guess I want to give my guys enough time to get more men so that I can push more men down. Plus, rather importantly, what's going on down here. Italy are currently being kicked out of Africa. This is quite an important thing to do right now because I don't want any distractions when it comes to actually fighting this battle. I don't want Africa being around as a potential problem. So I'm currently kicking Italy out of Africa. And that's going pretty well, all in all. So we're just kind of taking areas, making sure that they don't have essentially what they need to. Kick them out all the way up here, so these guys are now on their way down there. I can also... Do I just have air superiority? Probably. Oh, God. Apparently I've got loads of planes here that are just standing by. We should probably do something about that. So let's get these fighters up in the air. The fighters, tactical bombers, well, we do definitely need them over. Unfortunately, they've only got in this sort of... Oh no, we can stick them down there actually. Just sort of in the area for strategic bombing. And what are these? Hawker Hectors, which are Seacraft. So I'm gonna put these in for naval strikes, just to sort of bomb anybody around here that wants to have a go. And what else do we have? Palestine. We have a load of also close air support. I'll miss. Switch to there. Might be. No, it won't be good enough. So we'll get them out here anyway, and we'll put them on naval strikes and port strikes because we can. Okay, let's start time off. Unsigned divisions. I know decisions available. Don't. That's fine. Low manpower. Yeah, that is going to be a thing. Right. So what's happening in the world? Should also quickly check. Oh, right. Military Training Act is going to be finished tomorrow, and that will allow us to do something. I can't remember exactly what that allows us to do. Is that the one over here? Yeah, the Military Training Act over here. Apparently the German Reich. So right, yeah, all those we can't now do. We've run out of time on that. However, what we can do is start work on the extra research slot actually. Let's get that one up. Because having an extra research slot is always good. It's going to, well, accelerate research, obviously. We can do far more things. Meanwhile, construction is continuing. We've got radar stations being built in Malta and Gibraltar. I just thought that it would be a good idea to get those built because, well, I'll just speed up the game slightly. Radar coverage is really important ultimately in any sort of conflict, and yeah, so a very interesting development radar was. Now we go into history. It was originally designed as a microwave weapon to kill German fighter pilots and bomber pilots, as they came over to Britain. However, well, it didn't really end up that way, because the people who invented radar knew that you couldn't do that. You know, to have a microwave weapon that was capable of doing that, more power than there was in Britain at that point, more power than we really have today. So, you know, it was never going to work. Oh God, XR divisions. Oh, that went badly. What? Did it go badly? We've got divisions up in Dunkirk. Why have we got... Hold on. Things have... Wait, what? No, bad. What? What's happened? Call to arms. Can I get these guys out? They're gonna have to... They're having to move out here, and then we'll have to send them over to Dieppe, I assume? But I can only imagine... The French Commune, they must be a... Right, we need to move those guys over here. Yeah, the Nazis are moving in, so this must be French-owned. This is where it all goes suddenly horribly wrong. I have to move my troops over to Dieppe to hold it. And to... Le Havre? I'm going to butcher these French names. I need to pull all those troops out, because we're going to start losing ground at this point. It's one of those situations of we're going to lose ground because I'm having to pull my units out, but if we lose ground, I don't want to necessarily lose those units. I want to get them back to England so I can resupply them and rearm them and generally get prepared for what's about to happen. This is pretty much the point where the dominoes are now starting to fall. Calais is gone. If I can get the troops over there, then that'd be good. I mean, the alternative is to take them down. Oh God, they've penetrated up. History lesson on pause here. There's all I can do really is try and get those units out. And then get them over to Dieppe, get them back to England. I do not want to send more men. Yeah, that's the only thing I can do. Just try and get them out of France and back over to England. I'm going to move forward time slightly while keeping an eye on what's going on. We're essentially abandoning France at this point. Yeah, this is the point where France gets overtaken and Germany makes their actually quite humongous mistake, which is taking this land ultimately. I think they're free, so let's get them over to the port. So, while that's doing that, quickly just move on down to here, just to make sure everything's going swimmingly over here. Generally, yeah, actually. There's a little bit of resistance here and there, but it's minimal. We can start moving over here, and then... Do I have any other units in the area? I do. I want these guys to keep moving forwards, take the tip. Those guys to move over there, these guys to move down here. Just basically taking as much territory away from Italy as possible. And yeah, they're just all moving down to there. That's fine. Meanwhile, in the problem that is France, I am evacuating. I don't know how many troops I'm going to get out. Looks like I've lost most of my tank division. Would be... Yeah, I lost all of my tank brigade there. which is going to be a problem. But just get them out. Get out what we can. Get them back to England. Get them repaired, rearmed, and ready for, well, ultimately invasion again, which we'll probably do in about 1943. We just need to get people out right now. Get them out. Wait about 4 years, and then right, let's get these guys over to Portsmouth. Once they're on ships, it's not really too much of a problem. What else do we have in the area that can support? I've got an American destroyer flotilla I haven't really used yet because they were American destroyers and they're awful. I shouldn't say they're awful. They're terrible. Let's just stick them on a patrol routes. Don't want any of the Nazis sort of sneaking in. I don't think they're going to make Dieppe. I could risk it and go for Cherbourg instead. Oh wait, hold on. Normandy. What? I think they're just going for it. Well, we'll pull them out and do what we can. Also, can I get air support? Yeah, I'll take those and I will deploy them. just a case of I need a load of fighters to deploy over northern France. Yeah, I'll send in the gladiators because that's fine. Because they're going to do so well. Right, okay, while things are reasonably quiet, I'm going to accelerate time very, very slightly. Not too much, because I don't want to miss anything. So yeah, radar, the invention of radar. Yeah, so these weathermen, actually, came up with this idea of creating radar for the UK. And generally they did it, they basically said to the people in charge, we'll give you a way of detecting planes over the horizon, and if that doesn't work, then we'll have a look at your terrible idea for killing people with microwaves. And thankfully the radar system worked. It's sort of a little bit over embellished, I think, in the BBC drama Castles in the Sky. But out of that came the radar system, which was used to great effect, and the Americans, of course, eventually came up with their own system for the Cold War. That was their brand new sort of pride and joy, and they're not going to make it. They're not going to make the evacuation. Where are my troops? I do not want to lose them. At this point, they're going to be fighting their way through. Yeah, ultimately, at the moment, they are having to fight their way out. And I'm going to have to do this. Oh god, they can't move, that's the problem. I'm going to have to move into that space, and then I can't get them out. I can't retreat. France is gone. They've capitulated. They're just going to have to evacuate to Dieppe and see what we can get out. They'll just fight their way out. We'll give them all the support they need, but that's pretty much lost cause at this point, I think. So, yes, there's not much I can do, unfortunately, about them. Portsmouth Fleet, do they by any chance have... Actually, did my Uber ship ever complete? Hold on, where was it? Production? Oh, my Centurion class? No, that would be ready for 1942. Which might take a little bit of time. Also, so these units here, are they rearming? That's the question. Current fighting strength 2%. They've got 9 Matildas. Yeah, I really would like to get them to somewhere. I'd send them up to Birmingham, just kind of to get them out of the way more than anything. They're suffering from some fairly serious attrition, so they're a little bit useless at the moment for actually defending anything. Meanwhile, my troops are not going to get through. They're losing. I don't know. They're losing a lot of men, but they might get out. Meanwhile, what's happening down in Italy? It's one of those cases where they're actually doing quite well. Not really sure why because they are technically very hot. They don't have any logistics divisions with them. They're doing that. These 3 guys are going to head up into there and have that little battle. These are going to take this area. We'll just basically continue to slice up the country and take little bits and pieces back. I say back, we're essentially taking it off the Italians here. Yeah, they're having a very hot journey back. Okay, so that one's all completely useless. And at some point we get Churchill in. I can't remember when it is. But, yes. Anyway, yeah, so about the American system, the American radar system, which was fabulous. It was meant to be an all-encompassing system, and they asked the British to test it out for them. This was this was their Cold War protective system to warn them of any incoming attack from the air. And so they went to the British and they said, "Can you test this for us?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." And so they did. And in true British fashion, they thought, well, how would an enemy attack America from the air? And back in those days, coming from World War II era, there were basically 2 ways to attack. You either went in very high, because in order for their fighters... Yep, I've lost those 2 units. I say 2 units. I've lost I've lost a couple of brigades there anyway. That's annoying. Oh well. Kind of my own fault. I probably should have pulled them out a bit earlier, but... fine. Okay. So, yes, so you deploy your fighters extremely high, because in those days you weren't dealing with precision bombing, because there was no such thing, and so it was just carpet bombing, pretty much. So you could deploy your bombers nice and high. The fighters would have to really spend an awful lot of time and effort getting up to the bombers, and the bombers could just kind of sit up there and bomb the town or city or whatever was beneath them to smithereens. The other way of doing it, if you were doing precision bombing back in those days, would be to go in low. And when I'm talking low, I mean, when you think, a plane coming in low these days, they will have alarms on them that will go off if they, they honestly don't really have to fly really that low anymore. Safety reasons and all that means that they can't fly at, say, head height, which is roughly what some pilots flew Mosquitoes and Lancasters at. There are oh god, it was the Bouncing Betty attacks. Essentially, Germany had power that Britain wanted to cut. So, and quite a lot of this power came from hydroelectric dams. Now, they could... precision bombing, as I said, it wasn't really very good back in those days. So, getting a bomb down onto a target the size of a dam, well, good luck. The only other way to do it would be by submarine, but the Germans had already thought of this, and there were submarine nets and mines and all sorts crisscrossing. You couldn't get a midget submarine in without someone noticing. So what they did was Barnes Wallis came up with the bouncing bomb, which was a sort of a spherical device with a sort of a motor, can't remember if it was motor or flywheel, I think it was, sort of inside it. So when they dropped the bomb and it was spinning, and then it would bounce. So you could drop this thing from reasonably low, this spinning bomb, and it would bounce across the surface of the lake, I guess, over all the submarine nets, because of course it's a bouncing bomb, so it's bouncing all along the surface. And then it will hit the dam and explode and destroy the dam. This thing was reasonably successful. Oh, Kiev's fallen. Yeah, the German Reich now look like that. I mean, you know, they've still got a fair way of Soviet Union to do, but it would be nice if they didn't actually get that far, because it's going to be an awful lot of terrain to recover. So yeah, we need to build up an army essentially at this point. But anyway, so these Lancaster bombers, I think a couple of them were, well, this is the thing, because they were flying so low, because under searchlights essentially, because that was the technology in those days, searchlights and the like. They were flying underneath power lines, and so a couple of them did actually were actually destroyed as a result of flying into power lines. There was another attack that was done with the Mosquitoes, and you know, so the Lancaster is a reasonably slow aircraft. Mosquitoes, on the other hand, are reasonably fast aircraft, and the Mosquito is what you wanted if you were doing something dangerous, I would say. Because, quite frankly, the Mosquitoes got used for an awful lot of very strange uses. Oh, I've got 3 military factories. I probably should put them to work. Building artillery, I think. Oh, no. I need to put them into this. Needed for upgrades. Yeah, we need to get our troops with equipment desperately. How are we doing with equipment? Heavy tanks. That's what we're missing, actually. Let's see if we can take some of that off and put in the heavy tank, the Vickers. Yeah, that's probably a better idea. And then brings us up to 3 a week. I wonder if I can shuffle things around a little bit more to get that up. I'm gonna, because I need the infantry, and the infantry get the heavy tanks. 4 a week. Not much better. So I need 20 tanks per. I need more military factories. That's basically what I need. I need so many more. Okay, I've got military factories being built. I'm going to build more. I'm going to just queue up a whole bunch more. Not in the UK, actually. I'm going to start building them in Africa. Because I can, and because they're reasonably away from the fighting. Let's just use Africa, because we need Africa. Okay, what else do we have? Export focus. I mean, we could just go for a limited exports. That would be better. Factory outputs. Export focus gives us +10. I'm really tempted by free trade, you know. That would put most of my resources to market, but limited exports will really cripple my research speed. Yeah. Yeah, except all the non-aggression packs will help you. Still, we've just... Oh, God. That may have been a mistake. Chromium. Oh, God, I've got to buy for the Americans. Fine. Yeah, that'll do. Okay. Yeah, the research speed was kind of tempting. Especially, yeah, that is... Okay, Czechoslovakia have just joined us. Excellent. And they're actually in quite a good state to fight back. Problem is, we can't help them. Yeah, so where were we? Oh yeah, so the Mosquitoes, yeah, they were asked to be used in a bombing run to free Polish prisoners of war from a German sanatorium. And that also included some high up members of the resistance. Yeah, it was a disaster. Well, wasn't it? It's one of those situations where the target was destroyed, the problem was made to go away. The high up members of the resistance were not able to talk. That was basically because they killed everyone, or vast majority of the people, the prisoners who were actually there at the time. But the raid was done by a squadron of Mosquitoes flying down a road below the tree line, because there were trees planted all the way along this road. So you've got Mosquitoes, which were some of the fastest planes around. They were faster than Spitfires, certainly. Twin-engined. Which you might think, okay, they were twice as fast as over twice as fast as a Spitfire. And you might think, okay, it's got two engines, fine, you know, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, it was also made out of wood and fabric, so very light, very fast aircraft. Very powerful engines in them as well. And yeah, so they just got used for all kinds of just things. But yes, those were flown down a road below the tree line with trees either side of them. You make one mistake, that's you gone. Yeah. Okay, we got wars. British Raj have joined. Got 3 military factories. I'm going a little bit down the tank route. However, I will change away from I'm running out of resources now. I shouldn't have done that. Missing equipment production, really? What are we missing? Close air support, really? Okay. Right. Okay. I think that's the bulk of that sort of side of things done. I'm just going to nip down here and just deal with the few bits and pieces. Oh, they've tried to take. They've been sneaky. Bad Italians. Okay. Oh, things are happening down here as well. Let's relink these two up. Move these guys down and move these guys in down there. Meanwhile, I thought oh yeah, these are the units that I sent. I'm going to keep these on course, actually. I want to cut them down here and then destroy these guys while my horses deal with that little mess. And because I kind of need Africa for what I'm planning. Denmark have capitulated, yay. So yeah, going back to the American radar system, I guess. So anyway, yeah. So the Americans say, can you breach our defences? And so the British said, sure, we'll give it a go. First time they went in, flight of Vulcan bombers, flying under the radar, so really, really low, close to the sea. And yeah, and so the first thing the Americans knew about these bombers trying to land was when they were requesting permission to land. Like, yeah, we've got a flight of Vulcan bombers here, trying to land at the target airport. Yeah, nice radar system there. So the Americans went and fixed the problem anyway, and they made sure that the radar could cover as close to the sea as possible to make sure that nobody could sneak under the radar again. 'Cause, I mean, at this point, the Russians are coming up with some rather interesting designs of ways to break through American radar. So it comes at a good point. And so they say, okay, we fixed the problem. Come and have another go. And so the British say, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And so they do. They have to wear masks, oxygen masks, because instead of flying extremely low, which I strongly suspect the Americans were expecting them to try again, because, yeah, because it's not like they've fought with the British in a war before, in a recent war before. But yeah, so the British wear oxygen masks. They're flying at very, very close to what their planes are capable of doing, and they fly over the radar. And and as far as I know, the Americans should have fixed the problem by now. You can hope. But yeah, no, it's an interesting world out there. It's an interesting, an awful lot of just interesting stuff that sort of comes out as time goes on. I didn't learn any of this from school. School was kind of useless on the topics of the war. Generally, it was a case of, yeah, we won, and I think this is something that's repeated in an awful lot of schools. That the country where whatever it is being taught is being taught. It's a case of, yeah, we won the war, and I strongly suspect that's something that Americans still learn in schools. That that. The alliance was losing until America came into the war. The truth was rather more muddled. Certainly, had America not come into the war, we might have had some problems. I will say that. America were very good at building certain things. Being so isolated and being such a large country, such a large industrialized country, is actually quite important when dealing with situations like a world war. And they did send food to the United Kingdom to keep it in the war. However, all that we bought that food from them. It wasn't given out of the kindness of their hearts, unlike what happened with Russia and Britain. All that equipment that Britain sent over to Russia was free, because the price for doing it was far more important than money. it kept Russia in the war. That was nobody really liked Stalin, but Stalin was useful. Nobody liked communism. Nobody really liked the way that his country was being run. But end of the day, they had manpower that Britain just didn't have, and they had the ability to make very useful things like tanks. Steel is really becoming a problem. Aluminium. I've got loads of aluminium, and I can bump those tactical bombers up because I'm going to need those. Yeah, you can do the Lend-Lease. But when you talk to people online, and they're saying, well, America won the war. It's like, really? In what world? They were instrumental in the war against Japan, and so much respect to the troops that went over to Japan and dealt with that. It was not pleasant at all. Even just sort of dealing with the mentality of the Japanese soldiers of that time period, they would not give up at all. They would, if they ran out of ammunition, they would run at you screaming with a bayonet. It was a very, very tough war for the Americans to fight, and it came to its end, and we can look back now and say, well, no, they shouldn't have dropped the bomb, or they should have dropped the bomb. Ultimately, those opinions don't matter, because what mattered was the fact that Japan were not going to give up. They were not going to surrender. They needed to be shown that surrender was their only option to survive. And had the Americans gone in and just kept going, they would have won eventually, but the war would have dragged on for another 10 years possibly, and it wouldn't have lasted until America had basically invaded every single city in Japan, and that would have been long and arduous, and what can you say really to that? But you do wonder what they're being taught in schools. Certainly my view, having learned more about the war from the multiple angles, you see that it wasn't as simple as this country did the most. Every country had a contribution to be made, even France. French resistance, they did an awful lot, and the spies as well. Throughout the war, Germany believed they had 5 spies in the United Kingdom, feeding them information. In reality, they had none. All of the spies that the Germans had were British double agents, and they were feeding the Germans exactly what the Germans wanted to hear. They wanted to hear that the V1s were pounding London into rubble. They wanted to hear about troop movements. They wanted to hear about even just everyday events like football scores, just to ensure that the spies were actually reporting what they needed to, what they should be. And ultimately, the people feeding them that information, one wasn't even in the same. It wasn't even in the United Kingdom until MI5 eventually tracked him down and shipped him over to the United Kingdom to continue feeding information over to the Germans. Warren Garcia, codename of Bovril, and yeah, he started feeding the Germans. He went to the British and said, "I want to spy for you," and the British said, "No, go away. So he did it anyway and started feeding the Germans false information. And he was the one who, on the day that D-Day was going to happen, he sent them a message to say something is going on. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he said something is going on, and he didn't get a reply. And so he followed up a few hours later with an incensed message to say, wake up, things are happening. And then he gave them the entire plan for D-Day. And there wasn't a thing the Germans could do about it because it was going on right that second. The stories that come from the German troops of that day, where they're looking out at a sea of metal, and it's all coming for them. Yeah. It's something that a lot of games don't show, and I think games specifically have a very good way, a very unique way of telling a story. And none of them like putting you in the shoes of a German soldier looking out at that sea of metal and knowing that everyone is coming for you. Not you specifically, just in general. I think there could be some very interesting ways to handle that. And quite a lot of the time when a game does deal with D-Day, they will always put you on the landing craft going into it, not watching as the landing craft come for your position. And the very sort of unique experience, because the German troops will never have seen the tanks as they rolled up onto the beach, having been deployed not that far out off the landing craft, as the skirts deflate and the cannons, and suddenly you've got armoured vehicles on a beach where they shouldn't be, because the line was designed by people who knew that nobody would ever attack that. And so it was the beaches were mined, there were barbed wire, and it was all designed to make sure that nobody would ever want to attack. And yet, first things that roll up onto the beaches, you have your tanks, you have your Sherman crabs, and the flail tanks, the bobbies, and then you get your troops in, and then all the other variations of tank that the Hobart had created. Things like the flying dustbin. Right, okay, I'm just going to quickly nip down here. Yeah, so things like flying dustbin was it was an anti-bunker weapon. I think is the best way of saying it. Anti-fortification. Essentially, a large dustbin-sized mortar shell goes up into a tube, tank, and the tube sort of flips over, is aimed at a nearby fortification. It's fired, the fortification vanishes in a puff of smoke, pretty much. It was extraordinarily effective, but it's just a bit of a shame ultimately that when games games have quite a good way of being able to flip perspectives around in a way that feels natural, so you can show through the eyes of a soldier the wave of troops coming at you, and potentially then flip the point of view round to the British if that's what you want to do, or round to the Americans, who are not doing a very good job thanks to at the end of the day, I never blame the troops that are on the ground, because, or barely ever, because ultimately it's their leaders that are giving them bad information or ineffectual equipment. And so when the British went to the Americans and said, look, when your troops deploy on those beaches, they're not going to have any armour support, because the armour can't ride in the troop carriers. Too wide, too heavy, take up too much space, whatever. So you want some of our tanks, some of our special tanks, and then the Americans said, no, we don't need any of that stuff. And then the British eventually, with a bit of back and forth, I think, the British did go to them eventually and said, no, you are having these tanks, because you are not putting troops onto the beaches with no armour support. And the Americans said, okay, fine, we'll have your newfangled inventions. And then they deployed them 3 miles out and sunk them all, leaving American troops on the beach with their guns. And some people had what they called torpedoes, which were explosive sort of razor wire clearing devices. You kind of put a big explosive on a rod, essentially, and then shuffle it under the wire and then detonate it. Not very cutting edge, but effective to a degree. But it wasn't Omaha Beach, it was the other one, and I can't remember which one it was. The Americans had 2 beaches. I think it's Omaha they did quite well on, but the other one, they were just pushed back. They had no armour support, and machine guns coming down from fixed, static emplacements. It was not ideal, I think is the best way to say. And it's those situations where you pin it firmly on the brass, on the people that didn't want to understand the limitations of the equipment they were being given, because it was new technology and they didn't want to know. Okay, hold on, what have we got here? So France has won all of this. Let's move my troops up to... This could be a little bit of a holdout. And that one doesn't really matter. Right. Okay. But for the moment. So northern France is... ultimately, everything is calmed down a bit now. They're now going to try and invade us. We're not going to invade them until I've got a sizable army. And even then, it will be a very carefully designed attack. Can I cancel this? How do I cancel? I don't want to execute this battle plan. It was a terrible idea, and then I forgot about it. Delete order. Oh, Moscow may have just fallen. Quite a lot has actually fallen. Minsk has gone. Stalingrad. That's the one that. I think didn't they get all the way to Stalingrad before? They were pretty much meters away. They were, I think, about 16 miles or something away from Stalingrad. I think it was Stalingrad. Before they were turned away eventually, and the war turned. And then they were able to. The Russians were able to fight back province by province. A pretty bloody war. All in all. Right. So these guys are in. Those guys are, well, they've won. Okay, so that was actually not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. I'm going to move these guys over here and then move these guys here. I'm gonna, keep squeezing them, take away their land. I'd like to get Africa done tonight. Okay, let's start squeezing these guys. Pushing them back. And yeah, no, that's fine. We knew that was going to fall somehow. And well, we can just sort of continue on. I do want to switch that back off free trade because I'm losing too many of my resources to market, which means I'm having to buy in stuff through convoys, which can be easily sort of intercepted, I think is the term. So we don't really want that. However, my army brigade is actually starting to regain strength, thankfully, after the battering that they went through. And I've got 3 military factories, which I may not be able to... okay, we've lost Sevastopol. Yep, okay. Details for that. Yes, cryptological bomb, please. Which I half wonder if it's a reference to the bomb, but anyway. So, what's going on in Africa? I think Africa is the most important conflict right now, because we want to get this tidied up. This will last less than a day. I've got a sandstorm. So it is a really nice map, this. You move my troops in, cut them off. Hopefully we'll start getting them to suffer from some attrition. I don't want this to end up being this long drawn out thing that the last map was, where Italy had one area left in Africa, but they just weren't giving it up because it was a port. But we've pretty much isolated them at this point. It's just a case of wearing them down. I mean, they're pretty... yeah, there we go. They're now suffering from attrition. Please keep it up. Oh God, what's happened over there? We do not want them to break out. And don't want them to have to start chasing them around the map either. Oh, here we go. Chamberlain has died. Sorry, what? We need Churchill. He's popular, and he'll be able to start turning things around. Meanwhile, let's... Oh god, we've suddenly got a load of military factories. I can't do anything with them until I get that... Oh, wait, no, hold on. I can do something with that. Okay, let's just take that off to... that would really hinder my research. I've got to do it. I can get my research other ways, but right now I need the metals. And the tanks. I need the tanks as well. Okay. And then over to here, where we've got the war going on. Come on, move. Yeah, split them in two. It's these sorts of quite tight escapades, I guess, are the worst, the literal worst, because you are trying to deal with people who just won't give up. More Spitfires. And 90%. We cut them in half, and then come on. A little bit more, and they'll be gone. I've got 4 units moving up, but it's going to take some time because Africa is not very well developed. Unfortunately, the infrastructure just isn't there, especially at this moment in time. Oh, we've managed to get them to split apart. We'll keep that pressure up. Move these units in to support these. There we go. That gets us the airfield. I might be able to do something with that airfield to get us some close air support, actually. Let's just take that. Just make sure that everything's fine over there. It's fine. Everything's fine over there. Just kind of keeping an eye on what's going on a bit. There's a whole load of just... That's going to be the next sort of big problems, but for the moment it's fine. We'll deal with that one next episode. Alright, let's kick the Italians out, and then that will be finally ours. And then my guys can go and have some tea, I think. Oh, I was going to get them some air support if I can. Okay, that's Defender is currently winning. What? Oh, are they attacking us? Well, okay, well. Okay, they're gone. Right, so these guys can be... Yeah, they can just exist there. I might need them again. But, excellent. No, that's good. So we've done quite well, I think. Africa is now ours, okay. So, don't have to worry about that anymore. Or do to a certain degree, because the Italians could invade, but for the most part, that's fine. I think what I'm going to do is do our usual accelerate till we get to the autosave, and then pause it, save it, and we'll then be back next week. So it's just sort of mopping up. There'll be a fuel refining that's about to come off, and then we can get the next one on for that, which will probably be in engineering. 1940 probably be an idea to get the improved computing machine. 4 days we get the Norway's gone. Yeah, we get the next sort of upgrade, I guess. Bicycle battalion. Yeah, okay, fine. Things are happening. Okay, so let's get the next one on for here, which will be the Bren carrier, I think. Very nice vehicle, not a half track as shown, full track, but steered like a car, which is a little bit of a strange design choice, but it worked. It meant it was very easy for people to drive, because they came from, maybe they'd owned a car back in those days, or they'd driven one once, and yeah, so they could very easily learn how to drive a Bren gun carrier. Even though it was a full track, it kind of steered by bending the track outwards. It was a very odd piece of design, as opposed to an awful lot of tracked vehicles back in those days where you would have basically 2 levers. It was very odd for them to have any kind of a steering wheel, but that's not to say they didn't. The Churchill had a steering wheel, though I think that was a more conventional tank steering device, rather than how the Bren gun carrier and later on the universal carrier would do it. Yeah, no, good vehicles. Nothing too fancy about them. They were just, they were designed to do a very specific job, and then promptly got used for all kinds of things under the sun. But the initial design was literally, this is a thing that does a thing. It's a battlefield taxi, essentially, with a gun on it to offer support, infantry support, but it wasn't really designed to sort of really get into the thick of the fight. Right, the autosave is done, so I will pause here, and yeah. So anyway, so out of that, we've captured Africa for the good of the United Kingdom, and some of Free France as well. Germany is now huge, so we need to sort that out at some point. But I think next week, I should say, I may start work on Italy, because Germany is currently too big and it's too powerful. However, Italy we might have an inn. Certainly, we've got plenty of islands that are set up to accommodate troops. So that might be an interesting way in to take Corsica and Sardinia and Sicily, and then potentially go up through the boot.